Hello, dear students. As you know very well, that we have been doing the elegy written in a country churchyard, written by Thomas Gray, a very famous poem that we have been doing. In our previous lecture, we have completed four stanzas of this poem, as well as the introduction, little introduction about the poem and the poet Thomas Gray. Now we shall begin and analyze stanza 5 of this poem. It's very much clear to us that the poet is writing this elegy for the people who are living in that village or in that countryside where the poet is standing and he is meditating about them. He is thinking about them, and he is standing in the churchyard, and that is the country churchyard, rural churchyard. So he describes the atmosphere, the environment of that time, and we know that the time was of the evening time when everyone goes to his home after having worked in the fields and in the offices or in etc. everywhere. Even the animals, they have also returned to their enclosures. So there is a complete keep silence in the environment and on the spot. There are some little voices and sounds which are disturbing the calmness of the environment or calmness of that spot or that place that we have already discussed. Then the poet said that he is talking about the poor people of that hamlet who have been buried in the country churchyard. And they were the rude forefathers of that village. They were the ancestors of these villagers. And they were rude. But they were rude in not in manners and in etiquettes or in like that. But rude means here that they were very simple, they were very ordinary, they were uneducated and somewhat illiterate. But they were not uncivilized. They were civilized. So here rude does not mean that they were uncivilized, but they were civilized. So this is what he has talked up to now. Now we shall go with stanza 5, and I recite the text of this stanza. There are the four lines. The breezy call of incense breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw-built shed, the cock's shrill clarion or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. Very beautiful line. The poet is talking about the poor people of that village, and as he has said that they were rude, they were civilized, they were not uncivilized, they were simple, they lived an ordinary life. Now he talks about the different things that normally a person, when he wakes up in the morning, he does. And what were the activities that were done by those poor farmers? So here the poet is describing about the morning, how these people enjoyed the morning. That is, he gives us the three different things that a person is wake up by them. That is, normally these things would wake a person up in the days before alarms, clocks, or cell phones, because cell phones and alarm clocks were not there. But these persons, these people, these poor farmers were waken up by these three different things. Number one, the delicious smells of the breeze. That we have the line, the breezy call of incense breathing morning. So the delicious smell, breathing of morning wind, that is a breeze. The delicious smell of the breeze is the first thing in the morning. So here incense, that is a substance that we burn to make a room smell good. We know incense just like खुशबूदार अगरबत्ती वगैरह जो भी होती है. So here these farmers were awakened up by the delicious smells of the morning breeze. When the breeze blew there, they were awakened. The second thing, that was the birds twittering and singing in their straw nests. That also used to make them awake. And the third thing that he describes is the roosters, that is a cock at doodle-doo. This is the sound of the cuckoo bird. So the clarion alarm, we all know that in our villages we are woken up by the clarion of cock. सुबह सुबह मुर्गे की आवाज़ जो होती है, अलार्म होती है, that wakes us, that makes us wake. We then think, the people think that now it's going to morning, and we wake up. And the echoes of a horn blown by a hunter or a shepherd. So that there is also the echoes of the horn that is blown by hunter or a shepherd. So these sounds are very common, in fact, in the villages, and we are waken up by these sounds in the morning. So the poet here has described these three sounds: the breezy call of incense breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw built shed, the cock's shrill clarion, or the echoing horn. So all these sounds are available in the morning in the villages. And these people were awakened up by these sounds when they were alive. But now the last line is very important here. The poet says, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. Okay, now, because since these poor farmers, their poor people are now dead, they are no more there. Therefore, these sounds will rouse them no more from their lowly bed. Lowly means here not undermining or underestimating. Lowly means here humble bed. So they are sleeping their lowly bed, that is in the graves. Lowly bed means here grave. So they are sleeping in their graves, in their narrow cells, and they can never be woken up by these winds, by the cock, or by the other incense, fragrances of the winds, etc. that we have, that the poet has, that is the birds twittering and singing in their straw nests, etc. So these things will be there, But since the farmers are not there, so they will not be, these things will never rouse them from their graves. They are dead. They are not just sleeping, but they are permanently sleeping, and they will never come back to the life. So here the poet has the sympathy for them, that these things used to awaken them when they were in life. But now, since they are no more there, so these things will not be able to wake them. So this was the explanation of the stanza 5. Now we come to the stanza 6, lines 21 to 24. And let's go what it says. For them no more the blazing hearth shall burn, or busy housewife ply her evening care. No children run to lisp their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. So the poet is now continue with the previous stanza, and as he said that nothing will awake them now because they are no more there. In the same way, in this stanza, he is talking. He is again listing the kinds of day-to-day pleasures that these dead guys in the graveyard are not going to get to enjoy anymore, which they enjoyed when they were alive. So these are the natural, these are the sober pleasures, these are the day-to-day pleasures of these folk people. But now they won't enjoy them because they are no more there. So he says in the first line, for them no more the blazing hearth shall burn. Blazing hearth means चूल्हा, अर्थात अब उनके लिए घर में कोई चूल्हा नहीं जलेगा. That is, no one is burning the hearth fire for them anymore. And or busy housewife ply her evening care, nor any busy housewife will be busy for her evening care, for her evening preparation for the dinner. That is, no housewife is trying to take care of him after he gets home from work in the evening. So the housewives, we know they prepare they cook the food for the evening meal as well, and they wait for their people, their husbands, who returns from the field after having worked hard. So now they will be doing nothing because these people are not there. The third thing, no little kids are yelling. Now the little kids will not be yelling, not crying that daddy is home when he gets back from home, from work. Since little kids don't enunciate clearly, poets used to describe children's speech as lisping and sire. So let's go with these lines again. No children run to lisp their sire's return. Sire means father. Now no children will run in order to catch their father's lisp, their father's, you can say, lap, in order to take the kiss of their father. So now no children will run. And then, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. So no children will run to lisp their father's return because they are no more there, and no children will climb his knees. His knees means his father's knees, in order to get the envied kiss. That is, in order to take the kiss first, because there is not only one child in the family, there are the children. So everyone makes a race and runs in order to get their father's first kiss, and then they feel a kind of success that he has won or he has taken the first kiss of his father. So this is envied kiss. You see here, the poet has used the word envied, jealous. So the children are very much jealous to one another. Everyone wants to take the kiss first. And everyone wants that the other should not take any kiss. So they don't want to share the kiss of their father among all. So these were the activities, these were the pleasures, these were the delights, the sober delights, coarse delights that the farmers, that these poor people used to enjoy when they were alive. So no little kids climb up onto his lap for kisses that would make their siblings envy them. So because they are no more there, so nobody, no little child will climb up onto his lap. So these poor dead guys in the graveyard, they are in the graveyard. They are no more there and they are really missing out. So these four activities or the four pleasures here the poet is describing means that these things will not take place now because they have gone forever. They are sleeping, they are resting in their graveyards. Now come to the stanza 7, lines 25 to 28. Oft did they harvest to sickle their yield, their furrow oft the stubborn glebe as broke. How jocund did they drive their team afield, how bowed the woods beneath their sturdy straw. So, in the previous two stanzas, the poet described the pleasures that they enjoyed. Now, the poet is going to describe about their activity, about their actions, about their work that they did when they were alive. He imagines certain things that these people did back when they were still alive. So, these are the country folks. We should remember that they were described as rude, we know very well. And here we are also talking about the country churchyard. So, country churchyard, definitely it refers to the farmers. So, when it refers to the farmers, so the poet describes their activity. What? That they often harvested their crops with their sickles. A sickle is a curved knife with the sickle, हथियार, औजार जिससे कि फसल की कटाई होती है. So the first line, oft did they harvest to their sickle yield. So they used to harvest their crop with the help of the sickle. कि how they often they used to do so. The furrow is a long. Now let's go with the line. Their furrow oft the stubborn glebe has brought. See, the furrow is a long, narrow, shallow hole that you drop seeds into. Furrow. Glebe is an archaic word for farmland. So farmland, the farm is there, and furrow, you are making a furrow, that is the long one, and into that we drop the seeds. That is called the furrow. I am not able to explain the word furrow in Hindi, what you call, but furrow, that is made by the plow. That is made by the plow using the two bullocks, and then in this way we drop the seeds into them. So it's a long, narrow, shallow hole. And glebe, that is the farmland. So the farmers used to cut the furrow into the glebe, into the farmland. They would make the furrows using a plow that I have already spoken to you. But But if the ground is really hard to break into, then you call it stubborn. Here there is the word stubborn. Stubborn means that is not able to break that hard land. So if the plow or if the furrow cannot be made with the help of the plow into the farmland, it means that is the stubborn land. So here the poet is depicting a picture of a plow cutting a furrow, making a furrow. So he imagines that the farmers were cheerful, they were jocund, they drove their teams of oxen or mules into the field to plow. They took the help of the oxen in order to make the furrow into the farm, into the field, with the help of a plow. So this was the activity how they did when they were alive, in order to in order to uh, cultivate the crop, in order to grow the crop in their fields. And the second activity what they used to do, that is the woods bowed to stroke of their axe. They used to cut the woods with the help of the axes. They cleared forest in order to make their farms with the help of the axes. So here we have the personification, that is the axe, and the trees. The poet has used the word for the trees, that the trees bow down. See the lines. How jocund did they drive their team afield? How bowed the woods? How woods means the trees. How they bowed the trees beneath their sturdy stroke of the axe. When they struck the with the help of axe to the woods, they cut down them. So, but here the poet is using the word bowed. Bowed means sir jhukhana. It seems that the trees were bowing down. The trees were in respect or in regard, they were bowing down. But the reality is that trees were cut by these people, these farmers, with the help of their axes. So, even if we are really handy with an axe, the trees are not going to go down to you out of respect. They are just going to fall over. So, trees are going down, fall down, because they are being cut by these farmers. So, these were the explanation of these three stanzas. Now, let's come with the stanza 8, lines 29 to 32. Let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys and destiny obscure, nor grandeur here with a disdainful smile, the short and simple annals of the poor. Very beautiful lines, quotable lines. Very important lines for examination point of view also. Here, the poet is personifying. Two adjectives are there. Number one, ambition. So here the poet is personifying ambition, and therefore he has used the capital letter of the word ambition. The second, that is of the grandeur in the third line. This is also personified. So ambition means here, he means to say ambitious people. Grandeur means here the grandeur people, showy people, the people who believes in show and pomp and show. So the poet says in these lines, let not ambition mock their useful toil. So he has already described the toil, the work that they used to do. So he says, addressing to the ambitious people, that they should not mock, they should not make fun of their useful labor, their work, their homely joys, and about their homely joys, simple pleasures, and destiny obscure, and the difficult luck or fortunate destiny. He means to say that the ambitious people should not make fun of these poor farmers' useful work, toil, and their simple pleasures, homely joys, as well as their difficult fortune or the destiny. So he has used the word destiny obscure. So these poor people were very simple, ordinary, but their luck was very difficult. They were they had hard luck in every sense. That's why they couldn't develop themselves. Otherwise, they could also develop themselves. They could also become so and so. We will see in further lines how the poet describes about them. Then he says, nor grandeur here with a disdainful smile. He says that those people who believes or who likes pomp and show, they should not hear their short and simple story of these poor people with a disdainful smile, with a cunning smile. कि ऐसे जो घमंडी लोग हैं, प्राउड पीपुल हैं, उनको जो है कि इन गरीब बेचारों की छोटी और सरल जो कहानी है उसको कुटिल मुस्कान के साथ नहीं सुनना चाहिए. दिस इज वॉट द पोइट wants to say in these lines. So, as I told you, personification, that is, they should not mock the hard work of these poor people. They should not mock their homely pleasures, simple pleasures, or the unsung, obscure destinies of poor farmers, obscure, difficult destinies of these poor farmers who are now lying in the graveyard. He doesn't come out, but he doesn't come out and tell the readers to lay off the mockery instead. So the poet says that they should not mock at them about their stories, about their hard work, about their simple life. So they should not allow ambition to mock them. Then he says that we should not allow grandeur, addressing to the speaker, addressing to the passerby. The speaker, the poet himself says that we should not allow grandeur or the high social status to smile disdainfully or scornfully, cunningly at the day-to-day accounts or the stories of these poor people. So here again the poet is personifying grandeur, and he is scolding the readers as well as that they should not also mock at their poor, poor status of these people. So this is what we had for today, the explanation, the meaning of these four stanzas. I hope that you will enjoy it and you will understand the meaning of these lines. And these lines will help you to understand the poem and to explain and analyze your questions as well. So thank you very much, dear students, for now, and we shall meet very soon. Thank you. Hello, dear students. As you know very well that we have been doing the elegy written in a country churchyard, written by Thomas Gray. A very famous poem that we have been doing. In our previous lecture, we have completed 4 stanzas of this poem, as well as the introduction, little introduction about the poem and the poet Thomas Gray. Now we shall begin and analyze stanza 5 of this poem. It's very much clear to us that the poet is writing this elegy for the people who are living in that village or in that countryside where the poet is standing and he is meditating about them. He is thinking about them, and he is standing in the churchyard, and that is the country churchyard, rural churchyard. So he describes the atmosphere, the environment of that time, and we know that the time was of the evening time when everyone goes to his home after having worked in the fields and in the offices.
कैमरा ऑन
जैसे
करना।
ये किया है मैंने, है ना, ये मैंने रिकॉर्डिंग की। अब इसको अपन देखना चाह रहे हैं। अब इसको क्या करना है, इसमें से तो कैसे जाना है, कैसे। हेलो डियर स्टूडेंट्स, as you know very well that we have been doing the elegy written in a country churchyard, written by Thomas Gray. सुरभि, ये बंद क्यों नहीं हो रही है फाइल? ये बंद क्यों नहीं हो रहा?
क्या
इसको करने दो करंटली